with the guys on the shop floor or sitting at a desk all day, whatever it is that we're doing, we have a tendency to have repetitive motion. And with yoga, it kind of puts you in different positions that you might not necessarily get into just throughout the normal course of your day. To me, when you go through a flow and you start to understand or feel things that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise, you know, all right, maybe there's something here I need to work on. And that thing might be affecting 3 or 4 other things in your body and your movement. And, everything is connected.
Welcome to Guys Talking Yoga, a podcast created to help inspire men to get in the practice of yoga by sharing the stories and paths of other guys. I'm your host, Derek Vanderwalker, and today I'm in Upper Saddle River, New Jersey at the Triangle Manufacturing Company with my good pal and podcast guest, Larry Milburn. Larry, good to see you, buddy.
Derek, how's it going? Thanks for having me on, man.
Hey, thanks for setting this up. So who are we meeting today?
You are going to meet with our CEO, Dax Strohmeyer, and our CFO, Jeff Simon, today.
That's awesome. And you kicked off a yoga program at their company?
I started a yoga program here about a year ago, and it's gone really well. And I'm super excited to have them on the show to talk to you about it and join in when I can as well.
That's awesome, man. Well, great to have you, and thanks for setting this up. I look forward to hearing their story.
Here we go.
So let's just get started. Where are we, Dax? What is Triangle Manufacturing?
So Triangle Manufacturing is a CNC machine shop, basically, at our core. We're a contract manufacturer, mostly focused on the med device business. So we support companies that make arthroscopic surgery tools, joint implants, ENT, spine, small joint, just about everything you could think of in med device.
Awesome. So, and there's about 200 or 300 employees here?
Yeah, about 250.
Okay.
Yep.
And Jeff, you're the CFO, so you're the numbers guy. You make sure everything is getting paid for and the money's coming in. Is that right?
Exactly right.
Awesome. Well, great to meet you guys. Thank you for having me here. And Larry, thanks for setting this up.
Absolutely.
So Larry, quickly, remind me again, how did you get connected into Triangle Manufacturing, where not only you do some podcast and video work for them with producing content for Triangle, but you also teach yoga classes here as well?
So 8 years ago, I was brought in through a mutual friend of myself and Dax's family friend to do some content for them, video content they needed for their new website. And then I came back about 4 years ago under that same, guideline, basically, to continue making more content. And so I started doing that for the first 2 years. And then a year ago, after I had been certified in yoga, I've been teaching for about a year. It was December or January, and Dax and I had just gone out to lunch to talk about my deal for last year. Get that all set. I come in the door, and the 2 HR women were talking and said, hey, we have this crazy idea. And they offer here for the associates. They're really good here to the associates. And twice a week, they bring in a gentleman, Alex, who's like a trainer, and he works with them Tuesdays and Thursdays. Anyway, so Lizette and Roisin said, we have a really great idea to offer yoga. And we know just the guy who can teach yoga. And so I said, okay. So I started by teaching Mondays when I was here, 2 classes back to back, 2 45-minute classes back to back. And they were pretty well attended.
Like during the workday?
So starting at 2:30 to 3:15, and like a 15-minute break, and then the next class.
Yep.
And it's a mix. It's a mix of engineers and designers, and then shop floor folks come in. And it's now been a year. We're starting year 2.
Yep.
And so that's how I pretty much got in and got started.
So Dax, obviously the CEO has to sign off on this stuff, really anything, right? And it's a little unique to have yoga classes for employees, period. I know a lot of big tech companies have these types of offerings, but for a manufacturing business where everyone's kind of on their feet, getting stuff done, working with their hands, I got to imagine it's tough, in the business, finding breaks and times for people to do this sort of thing. Where did you get the feeling that yoga would be great for your community and culture here at Triangle?
Well, to start out, just kind of backing up a little bit, my own experience with yoga and starting my practice was about 10 years ago. I joined a gym with my wife, and she started me pulling on me on Saturday mornings and said, hey, why don't you come with me? And, I pretty much fell in love with it right away. It was hot yoga, so I remember the first time walking out thinking, I feel like I just jumped in a pool and I had my clothes on. But that sweat and just getting that flexibility and the core stability, everything about it I thought was really great, and it was something that I wish that I would have had earlier in life.
Yep.
So when Larry and Lizette and Roisin came to me with the idea of, hey, this could be a really great thing for the Triangle folks, and one of the core things that we focus on is continuing to constantly improve the employee experience at Triangle and continue to offer great things and also try to focus on wellness.
Yep.
It just seemed like a very natural fit. Larry and I had been working together for years, and I knew how passionate he was about all the things that we had done together. So I felt like this is another great way for us to collaborate.
Yeah.
So that was it was really it was an easy decision to make.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's been going on for over a year. Is that right?
Yes.
What have you noticed about the way yoga has impacted individuals as well as the company culture here? Obviously, everyone coming out of COVID, it's sort of a totally a new world across the board for work-life experiences, dealing with the stress of being somewhat in the office and somewhat remote, connecting with colleagues. What have you seen?
I think the energy around the folks that are there on a regular basis, the camaraderie, there's an energy in the room that I feel has spilled over to the everyday office life. A lot of people are in the room together that don't necessarily have a chance to work side by side throughout the course of a day. So getting exposure to new people. I mean, we are a 250-ish person company. So we're also work out of 4 buildings. So there's not always personal interaction with everybody every day. And I think that group that's come together and are the quote unquote regulars, they've found a bond in yoga.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeff, as another leader in the company, have you noticed similar things either in your own practice here or the way that colleagues seem to be using yoga here at the company just to improve their 9 to 5?
Well, to Dax's point, I think for one, it's really added a level of camaraderie that you really don't get, sitting at a desk or sitting at a machine, and you don't really, in many respects, get to interact with the staff like you would want to. And this provides that sort of ability to do that. And it also adds to a culture of like wellness. The company's very interested in the employee and how well they are in terms of being more well-rounded instead of being just focused on the job.
Yep. So, hey, Larry, from your seat, and I know you've got your own practice that you have gotten so much out of yourself on lots of levels. I know you teach up in Connecticut and you teach down here. You've mentioned this before, but you've got some guys who have spent a lot of time on their feet on these machines, on the line. What do you see and notice about perhaps physically how this stuff helps with these guys, these men and women getting through the day?
Well, it's not just them, right? It's not just the shop floor folks, because from the engineers to the designers, these guys, there's a lot of desk time. There's a lot of, meeting time and whatnot, a lot of time in front of the computer. And so I notice at the beginning of class, when everybody comes in, like in most studios, right, there's a lot of chatter, there's a lot of like amped up energy. And then at the end of class, they just sort of have they got that yoga look, right?
Yeah.
And they just kind of float out. But the floor is a different beast altogether. I spent 2 days down there last week filming all day, filming a bunch of B-roll for our content library. And it's loud. You don't realize how loud it is until you're down there for a while. It's big and you're covering a lot of ground.
Yep.
There's a certain smell in the air. It's manufacturing. And so they are exposed to that all day long. And I think to come in and to be able to have the time to decompress and move in a different way. There's a lot of repetitive motion out there. Mm-hmm. So I think in a way to decompress, move their bodies in a different way. And for a lot of them, that may be all they do for the week.
Yeah.
Because they're tired or whatever, they have life and they can't work out. A lot of them do the training program I mentioned Tuesdays and Thursdays. But for some folks, just laying on the ground for an hour, stretching and hugging their knees into their chest could be enough.
Yeah,
you know?
there's actually like the duality of the suffering ergonomics in the workplace. You got guys on their feet who want to be sitting down, and people who are sitting down who wouldn't mind getting on their feet.
That's right.
And I think that is something that and this is really sort of pushing out there this is a message to guys at midlife who struggle getting movement. You know, rolling out the yoga mat, whether it's first thing in the morning before the rest of the household gets up, or before you have to get in the car, jump on the train, or like you guys have the opportunity midday, the ability to move around in your body a little bit is I think such a missed opportunity that more guys should be taking advantage of, because obviously the older we get, you know, we're losing a little muscle over the years. We're just not moving around in the different ways that our joints and bodies need. The tension and stress starts to build up, and you got to find a way to work through that. Or you got to do something to warm up before you really hurt yourself, you know, swinging for the par 5 or whatever you're doing at the gym. And there's just so much to get out of being on the mat. You know, Dex, I'm going to throw it back over to you. I know you played serious college football, and you were you were in the NFL for a time as well, and other professional leagues. From a purely physical standpoint, and I would imagine being a pro athlete over the years, you've really gotten to know your body. What do you notice about what yoga can do for helping you stay tuned into your body and know how you feel, and also know how your body's changing as you get older and start to think about fitness and just staying healthy?
Sure. Yeah. With football, like we talked about with the guys on the shop floor or sitting at a desk all day, whatever it is that we're doing, we have a tendency to have repetitive motion.
Mm-hmm.
And with yoga, it kind of puts you in different positions that you might not necessarily get into just throughout the normal course of your day. Being that in tune with your body, especially as a professional athlete, I did not do yoga while I was playing. And in retrospect, I wish that I did, because I would have been that much more in tune with my body, which was so vitally important to my career at the time. To me, when you go through a flow and you start to understand or feel things that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise, you know, all right, maybe there's something here I need to work on. And that thing might be affecting 3 or 4 other things in your body and your movement. And, you know, everything is connected. So I think that if I had yoga at an earlier age, I think that, but certainly injuries would have been avoided. And I think that I would have maybe had a little bit more connectedness to my body and been able to leverage that connectedness into my performance.
Yeah, I think there's what I've noticed in my practice is the more yoga you do, you start to get more warmth and feeling in your body. I think a lot of it has to do with how your nervous system connects with those parts of your body that feel like a dead zone. Like it's like when you have one bar on your cell phone, there's like, I can't get a signal here in this hip, right? Over time, just the movement of a basic vinyasa class, I think makes that neural connection, but it also brings a lot more blood flow and fluids into those joints in those places. So and then that sort of will move through your lymphatic system, which is why when you do a lot of yoga, just like working out or any exercise, you got to drink a ton of water to flush that through so those toxins move out. But the moving around does allow you to have more warmth in your muscles, and then you can start feeling your joints. Like, where are you on your foot as you're at this shop machine? Or where are you on your feet as you're swinging through this golf ball? Or where are you as you're about to do, a back squat at the gym? You start to really notice, like, I can feel the arch of my feet in a way where it's not just I have tight feet. I really can feel where I'm going on. Larry, you were going to say something?
Well, I got 2 things now. But to pick up on that last part, as we know, it's not just the asanas or the physical practice, right? It's also the breath work and regulating your central nervous system. So, if you're going into this, we did a very slow class early on. I think you guys were there for this one, where it was more of a meditation. And I really tried to work on awareness. It was the first 10 minutes of the class. I really tried to work on physical awareness, but also your breath. And just to point out that, look, you can come and do this in anticipation of immediate. We have a lot of audits that happen here because of the medical side. So, right, if you're anticipating that, if you're anxious about something, the more you come in and breathe, the more your body automatically knows, like, oh yeah, it's time to chill out a little bit, you know? And so it's not just the physical, but it's the breath side as well that I really try to impart, here too. So, and I think, to go back to the tuning back in with the physical part, and just the more you do it, as you were saying, last year for a lot of folks, they'd never done yoga before. So just getting them in there and getting used to the rhythm of things, the sound of things, the poses, anticipating things and whatnot was important. And I mean, I feel like the focus this year, you guys could probably talk to this too. I feel like the focus this year is much different now in January than it was a year ago. Yeah. First of all, there's more people that are coming consistently. I now offer one class each day. So the class size is a little bigger because we have a shift change at around 3:30. Yep. So that's what I was trying to capture by doing two classes. But now everybody's together. We had to move to a bigger room to accommodate that. And just the focus in the room and how quickly now, after a year, and this is the thing about being consistent with their practice, after a year, how quickly people drop in, right? When I sit them down in their cross-legged position, right? Like how quickly they just start settling down and start to focus is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's just the power of being consistent.
I want to throw to Jeff over here. So Jeff, prior to this program starting at Triangle, had you had any exposure to yoga?
I had very little exposure. I have three daughters. I'm a girl dad, and through the years, they had all done yoga, including my wife, and they would always encourage me to go. And I would be more going on the machines or going to the weights or even going swimming, and would not necessarily want to go, primarily because it was all women, was one aspect of it. And the other is I didn't really think I could contort my body in the ways that I kind of see them at home doing it. And so I dabbled a little bit, but more recently I encountered a health issue, and that health issue really, had me relook at life and my body and being aware of my body. And with coming here to Triangle and Larry starting up his classes, I thought, well, maybe this was another opportunity for me to kind of revisit yoga, especially with, yoga for dudes. Yeah. There's someone there that really understands a guy maybe a little better in terms of what he can and he can't do, in terms of, as well as being a beginner. And to Larry's point, I've been doing it consistently since Larry started the program, and I'm really happy he's doing it twice a week now. And I've been getting not just better, but more aware of my body. Like you were saying, how, when you're standing up, you feel things you didn't necessarily feel before or you're aware of. And that was, really exciting. What I find also really cool is early in the morning when I kind of like come to work, going up the stairs, I'm a little slower. When I'm done Larry's class, I'm zipping right up these stairs without a problem.
Yeah. It's the fountain of youth, Larry's classes. That's what I hear.
And just to clarify too for listeners, like what we do here is not just yoga for dudes. Yeah. Right. These are mixed classes and whatnot. Obviously, I'm looking for those shop floor guys, and we have them coming in. They come right off the floor, grease on their hands. Yep. Big beards, right? It's like ZZ Top rolling in. It's great. And there's a lot of guys and gals who say, oh, I've got a knee issue. I don't think I can do it. I got carpal tunnel on my wrist, whatever. I say, just come and lay down. Just come and lay down on the mat. Listen to the sound of my voice. Hug your knees in your chest. I'll come by and take care of you. Yeah. And I do. I walk around and like give whatever I have to do to get people into the zone. And it's been pretty amazing to see.
So let's hit laying down on the mat. Why is just laying down on the mat a good place to start?
Well, I think finding stillness, first of all, right? For any of us in any one of our days is important. And again, just starting the practice of the practice, right? I think I said this when I was a guest on your show. There's this Buddhist saying that I thought was amazing, that the sitting is the practice, right? You don't sit down to not think, because as soon as you try not to think, it screws you all up. So just sitting down, that is the practice. Just sitting, just laying down, just get used to doing this thing. Yeah. Listening to this tempo, being aware of your breath, because it's not just laying down. Now I'm going to instruct you on breathing. So just doing that and being aware of all the points of connection between you and the surface below you. I talk about that all the time. You know, it was an important and powerful thing to start the body awareness.
Yep. And Dax, I got to imagine CEO of a multi-generation family. You're very much aligned with the values of this company. You're very much in with both feet on seeing the company succeed as well as the employees succeed in the community. There's probably a lot on your mind, and you're probably constantly on the go, literally and figuratively. Have you ever just laid down on the mat and taken a minute to check in?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think to Larry's point, you almost overlook the value of it because I'm just laying here. I'm not doing anything, but getting reconnected with yourself, getting grounded, breathing, just getting back to the basics and being still, being quiet with yourself, not letting the 10,000 things that are running through your mind at any given moment in time, not letting that affect you and being able to come back to center is such an important part of you know what I do, but it's what any of us do. I mean, I have a lot going on in my life, but everybody does. And to be able to come back to that moment and be still in that place, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to take that a little bit deeper, also I joke sometimes in classes that Sukhasana, or that easy seated position, can be the most frightening position for a lot of people to sit quietly.
Yeah.
Right? That can be harder than crow pose for a lot of people. And so knowing that A, you're going to be okay, B, it's going to feel good, and C, all the shit you're worried about is still going to be there waiting for you.
Yeah.
At the end of that hour or 20 minutes, or whatever it is. But at least if you can feel that thing and then know how to come back to it, helps you manage all that stuff outside of it, you know?
Something else I want to point out is that a lot of times life moves faster than you prefer it to. I've experienced that quite a bit in the last year or two myself. Sometimes when life is going really bad or there are challenges coming up that you would certainly not have signed up for, you're constantly on your heels. It's tough finding that moment to really take a step back and a breather and just roll out the mat, sit on the cushion, just go for a walk. But conversely, even when things are going great, that's probably even harder to recognize. You might need a moment to process how great things are going, appreciating that and recognizing that, and also making sure that you're not you're in the present moment, even though things are absolutely going phenomenal. So I want to point that out for guys as well who are listening, really for anyone who's listening, is that creating the habit of having a moment to check in. Like, it doesn't have to be a 90-minute flow class in a hot yoga studio to do your yoga. It can literally be a few minutes lying on your mat, working on your breath, checking in, and giving yourself a moment, because you know that much of the rest of the day is going to be reacting to everything. We talked a little bit about certain vinyasa sequences, classes, flow. I think every guy probably has some sort of yoga asana or posture that they found in the beginning that was, this feels good. This is actually something I can do. I like this. And then there's certainly other ones that still you have an aversion for, like, I'm never going to do that. Or whenever I do that, it feels terrible or whatever. So, Jeff, for you, was there a yoga pose that you can recognize or identify that when you first did it, it felt a little bit like, this is pretty good?
What really struck me at first when I started was just the pose of sitting, crossing your legs and sitting up straight and just escaping, to what you were saying earlier. I found over the past year that I'm walking straighter, and it was all, and I'm sitting at my desk without being hunched over. And it was all from just starting out sitting with my legs crossed, and my back straight. And that was, it's very simple pose, but it was something that I've really been taking with me throughout my entire day.
Yeah.
I think even if you're not actually doing those things, just the fact that you're aware all of a sudden of, like, oh, I just do this, right? I stack my head over my heart, over my pelvis. I just sit right from here to here. You just became aware of your body and reminded yourself to do it. You know what I mean? So maybe we're not always doing those things, but now all of a sudden you have a physical sort of vocabulary and awareness to know, to remind yourself to do it. Am I doing that? No, I guess I should do that.
Right, like a point of reference.
Point of reference. Exactly. Yeah, totally.
I literally had, just this past weekend, I was in Delaware goose hunting with my brother and brother-in-law. And if you've ever been in a goose pit, you could stand up in the goose pit and your head just sticks out above the ground. You got your decoys in front, sitting in a field. And so a lot of times you have to crouch a little bit. It's either sitting down, taking a minute, and you can't see anything when you sit down, or you have to stand up. And when you stand up, you're obviously in sight of the geese. So you have to be kind of careful. So there's a lot of times you're kind of squatting. And one of the things I noticed this weekend was I was sort of in a chair pose, right? So for those who are listening who don't remember chair pose, you're basically, your feet are shoulder width apart or about whatever's comfortable. And you've bent your knees and you start to go in kind of a squat position. Your knees are moving in front towards your feet, but you're getting in a squat. And sometimes your arms are raised, sometimes they're not. So I was in this little posture here, on the sort of the front of my foot, right? Putting the balance in the front of my foot, because if I put in the heels, it's going to feel uncomfortable. My spine was straight. So my knees are flexed, my hip is flexed, my spine is straight, and I'm literally rotating my head to the right and to the left, to take a minute to sort of stretch and get a little bit of a release in my back before I stood back up again. And I just think that when you're in these awkward positions, it's easy to get fatigued and start feeling back pain because something starts to spasm because you're in this weird position. But it's no doubt because of having a yoga practice, I actually enjoy goose hunting better, which I don't know if is the most yogic thing to be doing, but it's just an example that I think you can really start to pay attention and notice these things and put your body in a posture that feels more comfortable. And so, anyhow, Dax, any connection to some of this stuff or a pose that you feel like is one that's always your go-to or the one you feel most connected with?
Well, I think just to touch on the point that you were making earlier, when you go through flow, you have your right and your left side, and you're winding and unwinding. And if you're in a repetitive position for a long period of time, and something starts to bother you, going through your practice, it actually helps you understand, maybe my back's bothering me. Well, maybe it's not your back. And I think just the sense of awareness that you get going through your flow and saying, okay, well, maybe my back is bothering me. Maybe I need to get a little stretch in my hamstrings.
Yeah.
So that you might need to unwind something else that's not where it's manifesting itself. So that's one of the things that I think is cool. When I first started doing yoga, I was definitely into a lot of the balancing stuff and specifically hand balancing stuff, because a lot of my workouts were related to that. So trying to get into a headstand and then into a handstand and doing all those sorts of things early on in my yoga days was always what drove me and was really cool. Today, I have some wrist issues. I'm a little older. I'm not quite in that same shape that I was then. So stuff that's a little bit less stressful, a little bit less intense are the things that I'm appreciating more and as I get older. So, some of just the flow of going through the warriors or just, being in it, it's so I think for me, it's more about the evolution of my practice than anything else.
Well, the other thing is also mirroring. One thing I realize is, as a guy who played a lot of hockey and lacrosse growing up and through college, you get super asymmetrical with your body. Somebody once said there was a photo of Arnold Palmer late in his life, and his weak shoulder was just hanging low because he was so much dominant on one side with his body. You can start to, I think, use your other side to teach the opposite side something. Whereas, you think about your hips. Your hips are always going to have some asymmetry. Your glute med might be a lot stronger or tighter on one side, but it's actually a totally different experience on the other side. And even because of one side's glute med is stronger or tighter or shorter or whatever it is, your glute max, your other hip muscles are going to have their own sort of, let's say, offset in their way or their own way of compensating. So to your point about the fact that you might be feeling, something in your mid back, there might be something actually, it's the hip issue that's causing that problem in your back. And so when you have a regular practice, you start to learn a little bit like, I can do this on my right side, but I can't do on my left side. But my left side, I can do this stuff that I can't do on the right. And if you pay attention to that stuff, those feelings, you can, through your mind and your nervous system, start to connect in those dead zones, which we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And you can really start to affect change in your body that I think is, those changes are more long-term than just going to physical therapy for 10 weeks and then saying, okay, I completed it. You work on this stuff now and start paying attention to it. You're going to be in an awesome place in 10 years, 20 years, if you just keep at it.
Yeah. I think also, to keep pushing that point, a lot of times I talk about, if you're sitting or whatever you're doing, okay, go in your mind's eye here, travel through your body, notice where you're holding tension. Maybe it's in your shoulder. See if you can exhale and just release that part. And then what else comes up? As you let that go, where else are you holding tension? And now did you grip something else because you let that go, right? So it's always sort of noticing those things. And, one of the things I love to do at the beginning of class, I do it up here, I do it in Connecticut, wherever, as it was drilled into me, was starting in, your basic cross-legged seated position. I do this with these guys all the time. Right? Whatever shin you're most uncomfortable, you are most comfortable with in front. Okay, we do a few things there, maybe a forward fold. Now extend your legs, a little bounce. Now recross with the opposite shin in front. The first thing that happens, everybody's like, oh, geez, I don't even know what shin I normally sit with in front. Right? So there's always a funny moment when they're trying to figure that out. Then they get that other shin in front that they're not used to sitting with, right? And the first thing I say is, now just notice how that feels. How does that feel compared to the first side? Just notice. Now, some people might not feel anything different until I say, okay, now fold forward. And then all of a sudden the alarm bells start going off on that hip because you're like, oh my God, I never moved that way. So it's the same sort of thing. It's just becoming aware of both sides without judgment, right? You're just noticing these things and seeing what comes up.
Yeah.
And then the more you do it, the less you think about it.
So something else, we have, probably the two of the most integral leaders of the company, the CEO and the CFO. You guys obviously have other colleagues who are equally as critical in the business, but you guys very much need to know the nuance of the business. Certainly Jeff being the CFO with all the details with the accounting and balance sheets and income statements and just all of those intricacies from a financial standpoint. And Dax, from understanding your path in the business, doing almost every single job in the company, you've actually, experienced many, if not all of these types of roles. And obviously, to be a successful business, knowing the nuances of the business, what are the input factors that affect output? I see it the same way with your body. I mean, I think people just basically say, I'm getting older, I can't do this stuff. Or I got this bum shoulder that I injured, in college that I never sort of sorted out. There's an opportunity to learn the nuances of your body through feeling and awareness, which I feel like, Larry, you've been sort of stressing in this conversation, which is so critical, which is probably the critical aspect, meaning who cares if you can't touch your toes, but are you aware of what you feel in your body that might inhibit you from touching your toes? And by the way, you don't have to touch your toes. So I think understanding the nuances of your body comes from feeling and awareness. And so if you keep doing this, your body starts to, have better EBITDA or cash flow because you're really cranking in your ability to operate and perform at your best possible way. And sure, machines will break or machines will wear down, and you might not have output from a resource, but you learn to optimize given what those inputs are telling you. So you see an 80-year-old guy who's just an absolute Johnny Llama on the trail. He's fully, totally present. He's in great health, or at least in spirit. He's hiking better and faster than people 20, 30 years younger. That guy has paid attention to his body and his mind over the years and learned to really optimize for success. Dax or Jeff, either one of you have thoughts or feelings around just how much you've gotten out of your practice over the last year with Larry?
Would you like to go first?
Well, the most, what I've gotten out of the practice with Larry, like I said, is I had a major health issue that I had to really kind of like relook at my body and how I managed my body. And what Larry taught me was, it doesn't take much to reconnect with your body, to kind of get into that meditative state and to really, focus, on yourself, which is what I felt yoga allowed me to do, was to focus on myself and kind of push everything around me away. Whereas before I never was like that. I was running, life is busy, the stresses and the pressures and that's one of the biggest things I got out of the yoga so far. And to your point, you don't have to bend all the way down. You don't have to have the perfect stance to really feel, your body and how it's connecting the different aspects of, like you were saying, the neurons and the blood flow. And that's something that, I've been continuing to do on the weekends, and just not so concerned about the form as I am the substance of it.
Yep.
My experience is twofold. One, personally, and two, professionally. Starting with the personal side of things, when the pandemic hit, I never re-upped my gym membership after things opened back up. So my access to yoga was, or at least my normal access to yoga, had gone away. And so did my practice for several years. So Larry coming back into the fold was an opportunity for me to get back to the mat, and very appreciative of that opportunity, because it was probably the thing that I missed from the gym the most, which is very surprising coming up in a professional sports and football background. You'd think that pushing the weights around was the thing that I grew up with. So the fact that I'm missing yoga seems sort of contradictory, but it really was. It was the thing that I was missing the most. And I'm very appreciative to be able to be back to it. But the professional side of things, being able to make the decision to bring yoga to Triangle and to have 20 or so people on a regular basis being a part of a new little different community at Triangle that is helping them, is improving their wellness, it is helping, hopefully from a spiritual standpoint, is something that I get to take a tremendous amount of pride about, because it is something that we're providing for the employees. So it really is a special thing.
Yeah. Not you know what it is? If you just read what you have on the wall right here, I mean, that just says it all. And at the end of the day, it's the people that matter most. Absolutely. And that's how you always looked at the company. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that's something that's been obviously passed down through generations. Willie was my grandfather, and that was kind of the core statement that he founded Triangle on, and it's worked for us ever since.
And the quote is, "At the end of the day, it's the people that matter most." William Strohmeyer.
Mm-hmm.
So one last thought I wanted to close on, which is I came across a story about how when you were starting with the company, working for your dad, you were looking to make a little bit more money. You said to your dad, like, can you bump my pay a little bit here? And your dad said, one of the privileges of being the boss's son is that you can work as much as you want here.
Yep.
And I think and of course, obviously, that gave you the opportunity to really see everything and become a super effective and well-liked leader here. But when I think about movement, I think the privilege of the fact that if you can do things with your body now, whether you're 35, 48, 57, 64, 72, whatever it is, like, you can move as much as you want. And to really take advantage of the ability to get into the nuances of your body, your breath, your awareness, how your body can learn and adapt to, acute setbacks and chronic challenges. There's a lot more space and opportunity, I think, for anyone, but particularly guys who seem to be, I think, the quickest to kind of resign to the fact that they're getting old and you can't do stuff. If you can move, keep moving and learning how to move better. And I think what you guys are doing here is fantastic. I just compliment Jeff and Dax, and the leadership of this company for making this opportunity, testing it out, leaning into it, and continuing to make it something that works for the culture here. So Just want to thank you guys for doing what you do. I wish more companies did this sort of thing. And I really appreciate you guys having me here today to talk to you guys and share your story.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So Larry, thanks again for inviting me to be here at Triangle Manufacturing. For those who are listening, I know you mentioned a couple times Yoga for Dudes. Well, what is Yoga for Dudes and how can you find it online?
Yoga for Dudes is my mission to primarily get guys comfortable with yoga, with the idea of a practice of yoga, removing the stigma, whatever that may be for them, of what yoga is or could be, and having them come and again, gaining confidence on the mat to then take their practice out to somebody else, their local studio or whatever it is. You can find me through the website. This is yogafordudes.com. I encourage you to sign up. You get a free PDF download of a beginning yoga pose guide, and eventually I will start a course that you can download. But that's the best way to find me right now. This is yogafordudes.com. Then I also teach up in Litchfield County, Connecticut at a place called thekulacollective.org. Thekulacollective.org. I teach there Fridays and Saturdays. And yeah, Derek, it's been awesome to have you. I'm super psyched to host you here. It's nice to be on your show twice now. It's made me feel even older being a veteran. I can call myself a veteran of guys talking yoga. And thank you both, Dax and Jeff, for being willing participants today too on this little experience, and for having me teach yoga here. It's been an amazing experience. You know how much I love coming down here and not just doing what I do normally in my life of video work, but teaching yoga. It's informed my teaching incredibly. It's informed my own practice. And it's just amazing to see the strides that people have made here and the path that they're going on. I love it.
Awesome. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.